You're listening to the Good News Podcast with Jamie Holtum, brought to you by NBUC.
Well, welcome everybody to the Good News Podcast. This is part 2 with Theo Fleury. Yes, the Theo Fleury, elite NHL player. And friends, believe me, this is one of the best interviews we've had yet on the Good News Podcast. It is deep, it is significant, it is real. It's going to blow you away. And I have to confess, finally on this episode, near the end, we get to talk a little bit about hockey. But really, what this message is all about, what this conversation is all about, is someone, Theo Fleury, who found healing and great purpose and is sharing that with a world in need. Friends, enjoy. Get ready to be inspired. Let's dive in. Hey, you mentioned, Theo, about really being intentional to bring healing and hope. I love what you did with those interviews, by the way, that you had your own agenda. And good for you, man. Good for you. How are you using your platform? And that's really, I mean, that's, I think, where your hockey world and the ministry, the work, the way you're serving and that purpose that you have now to bring healing and hope. That's where those things come together. How are you using your platform? What are some of the ways that you are involved with other organizations, or just, how is that playing out these days?
Yeah. So we created the Breaking Free Foundation here in Calgary, and we support all trauma survivors. We have a couple of programs. First program is a therapy grant program where we provide therapy grants for people who can't afford therapy, which is the majority, not the minority, and we'll pay for your first 6 sessions with a trauma-informed therapist. And then if you need more after that, you can reapply and, we'll pay for more. But our most successful program is we do these things called meetups, and we do a couple every month, and anybody and everybody's invited to come and have a conversation about trauma, mental health, and addiction. And, I know that we've saved quite a few lives with this program because, a lot of people, have said, I came into this room suicidal. And if I didn't have a good experience tonight, I was going to go home and do the deal. And, they say, I found my tribe. I found my group of people that understand me, that don't judge me, that only give me love and support. And, in the 12-step rooms, they always talk about, we're going to love you until you can love yourself. And that's ultimately, where we're all trying to get to. Right. And so, because I know my own experience, right? I didn't like myself. I really didn't like myself. And, today I do, today I do the things that are necessary for, emotional, physical, and spiritual healing, right? And ultimately those are the 3 areas that need the most work.
Yeah.
But when I grasped onto the spirituality piece, that's when it was a game changer. It was a game changer, because, I asked for help and the help was there, right? And it's still there, right? And I have it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, right? It's just a consciousness that is there. And, so I created the Breaking Free Foundation. And then I do some work with a global mental health organization out of New York called We're All a Little Crazy. And what I love about that group is we're taking a real sort of holistic approach to healing. And because let's face it, Big Pharma owns mental health, right? They own it. And, the chaos that we're seeing in the mental health space is because of Big Pharma and the message that they're sending. And, what they're doing is they're giving us synthetic brain chemistry. Okay. And anything in a synthetic form, when we put it in our body doesn't know what to do with it because it's a foreign substance. It's been doctored. And so, at the end of every big pharma commercial, they read off the 100 side effects that this certain drug causes, right? So when you put a synthetic substance in your body doesn't know what to do with it. So what happens? It gets stored in your liver, gets stored in your kidneys, and gets stored in your intestines. And you can't move it out of your system. And that's why, we have all of these side effects. And so, I attend sweat lodges all the time. It's one of my favorite things to do. And so I hang around with one of the most powerful medicine men in the world. And what he tells me is that the earth has every cure for every disease in its natural state, in its natural form. Right? And so, when I look at, mental illness, we're seeing a lot of movement towards psychedelics. And with psychedelics come in their natural state, in their natural form. Put them in my body, first of all, knows what it is. And then secondly, knows how to discharge it and get rid of it. Right? And so, I have never in my whole entire time that I've been in this space been contacted by more of these natural-based medicines that are going to change the landscape of mental illness moving forward. It's groundbreaking. It's inspiring. It's incredible, and so. I'm really excited about, where this is all going because, we've had a lot of suicides in the hockey world. We've had a lot of suicides in the hockey world. And, it's because of the game that we played. It's very traumatic physically, I have more physical trauma than I do emotional trauma. Right. Mm-hmm. And so, that's what I've been dealing with for the last 5 years is physical trauma, right? It takes me a long time to get out of bed every morning because I'm so stiff and I have arthritis and, I have concussion stuff that, that I'm dealing with. And everything that I'm researching, everything that I'm reading about psychedelics is a real opportunity to overcome all of these physical ailments that I have, and, I go do acupuncture, which is, old Eastern medicine stuff, I love that stuff. So, there's so many different ways, there's 10,000 ways to heal.
Yeah.
Okay? And, you just have to find your right formula, but the right formula work on my emotional, my physical, and my spiritual, trauma.
Yeah.
That I've experienced, right? And so, when I sit in the sweat lodge, and they close the flap and it's completely dark, I'm with myself and I'm with God.
Yeah.
I am so close to God, I can touch him almost.
Wow.
And what it allows me to be present in the fear of the darkness. Right? Mm-hmm. My biggest fear was being alone.
Wow.
Right? And when you're connected spiritually, you're never alone.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And so, I love being by myself now.
Wow.
I actually like myself, and I'm okay with, just being with myself.
Yeah.
Ultimately, in any sort of healing process, that's what it comes down to. It comes down to, and if I have a great relationship with myself, how do you think all of my other relationships are going to be? They're going to be the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? But if I'm angry, frustrated, all these things, it's a shit show.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I always say, left to my own defenses, left to me running my own life, is the biggest shit show on the planet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And, you know, when I drive the bus always crashes. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, 5,058 days ago, I got in the passenger seat, and I don't give a shit who drives it.
Wow.
Right? Because it's God, Allah, Buddha, Jehovah, whatever it is, the universe that's driving the bus.
Yeah.
And the only time everything goes sideways is when I get back into the driver's seat.
Yeah.
Right? I have to remember about surrender.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know? And you know, I love the third step prayer. You know, God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and do with me as thou wilt, relieve me of the bondage of self so that I can, you know, manage my life.
Yeah.
You know, because I can't manage it. If I manage it, it's not good.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, there's so much trust in that. There's so much humility. There's so much compassion. There's so much empathy in that piece.
Yeah.
And, you know, I work in the prison system. You know, I work in the prison system with inmates. And the two greatest lessons I've learned in the prison system is compassion and forgiveness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. And, you know, those two pieces like have set me free. Like free. I'm free. You know, I'm no longer attached to my trauma.
Yeah.
Right. You know, and you know, I lived my whole entire life in my past. You know, I lived it in my trauma. You know, played the victim.
Yeah.
And I had my excuse was warranted. Right.
Yeah.
You know, I could be angry. You know, I had an excuse for being angry, but you know, what was happening was my life was completely unmanageable because of that space, the victim space, victimhood, you know, pour me another drink. Right? You
Wow.
know?
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, when I got out of the pity party and that's the thing, you know, this is hard work.
Yeah.
Like it's hard work.
Yeah.
And, you know, not a lot of people want to do the work, you know, and it's those of us who do the work that get to that ultimate space of peace, joy, happiness, and serenity. It's not all day, every day, but there are, you know, glimpses and there are moments where, you know, I feel at peace.
Yeah. Oh man.
And that peace is coming tomorrow because I'll be standing on the first tee of the golf course, and you know, I'll be at true peace, joy, happiness. You know, and that's my happy place.
Yeah. You know, Theo, as you're talking, man, you use the word freedom. Like you look free. Like there's a smile. Your eyes are kind of popping out of your head because what you're talking about is so real. Not just for you, like for all of us. That word surrender. Troy, I want to toss it over to you because we're doing a series around surrender, and how much of what Theo just said describes exactly what we're trying to do. And what I love. I could go on and on. I love so much of what you just said, Theo, and what you're doing. This is a good news podcast, man. This is good news. Like God is redeeming your life and your story to bring healing and hope to others, but it starts with you. And I think sometimes we mistake, where does God fit into all of this? We are involved in what God is doing. We are a partner, even in our own skin, with what God is doing. And I love how you have surrendered, leave space for God to do what only God could do. Yeah. But you also know the role that you play within that, and to maintain that and keep that and offer that and share that. So, man, like, thank you. Troy, just what's your reflections on what you're hearing here, and then we're going to come back to Theo for one final question because we want Theo to have the last word.
Yeah, well, you know, God has funny ways of bringing people together at certain times. You know, we're going into our third week, I think it is, in the surrender series, and it's like, of all the weeks that we're going to talk with Theo, this is the week, right? Surrender. Like we all deal with it. We talk in our small groups, you know, about how it's hard. It's really hard. You know, we have egos. We want to do things our way. And in our small group, Jamie, we talk after service, and I'm the same way. I'm like, I am not good at driving the car either. I didn't drive it into the wall all the time.
Yeah.
So I relate to that 100%. And, when you come to a point in your life where you can give up your ego and give up yourself and let God take you down the path, as you say, whatever that is for you, it's freeing. It is freeing, and it's hard. It's not hard. Like you say, every day you got to work at it. It's not I don't think it's a natural human thing to be able to give up yourself. If you're a competitor, like all three of us are, you want to be in control. You're A-type personalities. You want to be making decisions, and I'm like Theo. A lot of the decisions I made weren't healthy ones. So, you know what I mean? So I can relate. So it's awesome to hear that,
isn't it?
From his perspective as well. And we didn't prompt him with anything. It just
it's cool how it's all come out. And hey, thanks, Troy. And
a daily reprieve based on our spiritual condition. That's what it comes to.
Yeah.
So I have a theory that I use every day now that I live by, and it's I try to be successful 24 hours successful 24 hours and repeat it every day. So that's what my goal is. And I can't look too far down the road for myself. I don't do that because I get overwhelmed and I fail. And that's when I start taking control again. But
it's they say if you think about the past, that's depression.
Yeah.
You think about the future, that's anxiety.
Yeah, for sure.
So with COVID, we don't know what it looks like. So there's a very high vibe on the planet of anxiety,
for sure,
which is, in neuroscience perspective, that's cortisol and adrenaline. That's the space we're living in. And cortisol is like acid in our body. Stress, that stress hormone. And so where does disease love to live? It loves to live in an acidic body. And so if we live in high stress, high anxiety, and we're not eating well, and we're not exercising, and we're not sleeping, and we're not, well, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the goal is to live 24 hours at a time, be in the present as much as possible, which is almost impossible to do. And so, I break it down. I'm like, okay, for 8 hours of that, I'm hopefully sleeping. So now I'm down to 16. If I work 8 to 12 hours a day, right? Now I'm down to 8. Now I'm down to 4 hours. So basically for 4 hours a day, I have to be present. That's it. Right? And so if you break it down, because, I'm a elite athlete. And so that's how you break down your goals is you have short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals to achieve. And if you have small goals, the small goals are easy to achieve, which then inspires you to get to the medium and the long-term goals, right? And what is the long-term goal in this space? Peace, joy, happiness, and serenity, right?
Yeah.
And, I have a spiritual grandmother who, the thing that I was attracted to her was serenity. I was like, oh my God, she is so calm, and I was like, I want that.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And I want you to teach me how to get to that place, and it, she's been amazing.
Yeah. That's so cool.
Amazing teacher in my life. And, 50 years ago, she was living on Skid Row in Winnipeg.
Wow.
Picked herself up, dusted herself off, got educated, and just became this incredible human being.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
So,
So cool. Oh, hey, Theo, just a couple quick questions to close, if we could. We haven't talked hockey at all, and I'm totally cool with that, but maybe just your favorite hockey memory, just quick, if we could. And then what would be your word of encouragement, of good news for people who might be listening to this? Both people might be struggling with some of the things we've talked about, or people who are trying to support others who are struggling. Yeah.
Well, geez. So, my whole entire life, I was told, you're too small and you're never going to make it. Okay. And, when I look in the mirror, I don't see somebody who's small. I see somebody who is incredibly determined, somebody who's going to outwork every single person. Somebody's going to compete. And so, my fondest memory is, when I was 6 years old, that's when I talked about playing in the NHL. And how many 6-year-olds do you know that are that focused and, are that goal orientated at that age? Well, I was. And so I never listened to the noise, okay, because it was other people's perception of me, and they didn't have a clue who I was. They only looked at my outward appearance, and they didn't look at my DNA, and they didn't look at my, all of the adversity, that I had faced to get to the ultimate goal. And so, for a guy who wasn't supposed to play one game in the National Hockey League, I played, including playoffs, like over 1,150 games. And so basically for 15 years, I got to do something that I absolutely loved to do. And they actually paid me to do that, and because of that, I was involved in some of the greatest hockey moments in Canadian history. I played for Canada 10 times in my career. Won a Stanley Cup, won a World Junior, won a Turner Cup in the minors, and then ultimately finished it off with the 2002 Olympic gold medal in Salt Lake. And so, to pinpoint one particular, moment would be very difficult. But the fact that, that I wasn't supposed to, and that I did, and not only did I do that, but I, was a part of all these incredible experiences, and I got to hang around with the greatest leaders, in my sport. And what was interesting was, the Gretzky's, Lemieux, Sakic's, Yzermans, all these guys, their greatest leadership quality was what? Humility. Mm-hmm. Humility, right? And I played for a lot of guys, a lot of leaders who led with ego. Mm. And you know what happened around February? Everybody could not stand that person, would not follow them, would not do anything, And what we're seeing in the world right now is ego leadership, right? And when you lead with ego, nobody's going to follow you anywhere. But if you lead with humility and compassion and empathy and all those things, people will follow you to the ends of the earth if you lead like that, right? And like I said, we don't have a whole lot of leadership in that space, right? And so, I pray for one thing, and that's willingness, willing to do whatever needs to be done, right? Without questioning, without, just letting it happen. And, words of advice is, if you're struggling, you're in the majority, not the minority. That's what, the last 15 years has taught me in my research, is that it's all of us, right? And in order for us to get out of this, it's going to take all of us, right? It's going to take all of us to listen. Listen with a compassionate heart, empathetic heart, understanding heart, faith-based heart, because when you live in your heart chakra space, the world's an unbelievable place to be. But if you live in your brain, nothing good happens, because your brain is designed for negativity, right? It's our survival mechanism, right? And they say it takes 500 positive thoughts to undo one negative thought.
Yeah.
So the less time I spend in my head is good for everybody. You know? but it takes, you know, in order to be in that space, it takes God to be a part of it. Because when you have God in your life and you trust, you know, that there's always been a plan for your life. And you know, one of my favorite therapeutic processes is a thing called EMDR therapy. Okay. So it's almost like a hypnotic type of therapy. They take you to that space. And so I was doing a therapy session, and somehow we went back to right before I was conceived. And it was just me and God in this therapy session. Okay. And what God told me in that space was, everything that's happened in your life has been part of my plan. That you were going to struggle, that you were going to have all these things. And, you know, I never really sort of believed that there's a God's plan for each and every one of us. And in that moment, in that space, you know, it was like, wow, okay, I get it now, you know. But I needed that confirmation that, you know, that I could stop playing the victim and I could just step into, you know, my purpose. And that purpose is service, right? Ultimately. And that's the best advice I would give to anybody. Be of service. Be of service. Because I've learned more from working with people than I've taught them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what I always tell young coaches when I speak to a group of coaches, and they hate when I say this. I say, your job as a coach is to learn more from your players than you can teach them. Awesome. And all the guys with big egos and shit, you know, I see they're giving me this face and all this shit. And I'm just like, you know, your job is not ego.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, your job is not to be an asshole. Your job is to learn, because when you guess what happens, you become a better coach. You become a better human being, right?
Yeah.
And what I'm seeing in youth sports is completely out of control.
Yeah.
Out of control.
Yeah.
You know? And I always say, there's only 700 jobs in the NHL, and guess what? Most of them are taken because Crosby has a 10-year deal. Ovechkin has a 10-year deal. And Kane and Taves and all those guys. So I say there's 9.5 million kids worldwide playing for 60 jobs a year. And that's it. There's no more jobs. And so why do we put our kids in sports? We put our kids in sports to create quality human beings, not professional athletes. And that is completely been lost.
Yeah. Yeah. What a great message, man. Oh,
two things I gotta just ask, Jamie, if you don't mind. The two things I love that Theo brought up is how he came to a point in his life where he realized that all of his garbage that he went through, all of the trauma, all the nastiest stuff that we read about and, you know, we feel awful about, he put it into his perspective now that what he's done from that day when he asked God to take away this garbage out of his life and surrendered, that day forward was the path to the best days of his life. Right. And the second thing is humbling himself. You know, we all know if you're an elite sports person, you've got to have an ego because you have to believe in yourself. Right. So to let that go is very hard. I mean, I'm not an elite athlete and I have a big ego too. So you know what I mean? You got to let it go, man. You got to let it go. So it's great advice. And it's one of the things I'm doing too is my moods determine my behavior. You know, I got to learn that.
Ego causes way too much damage. You know, it really does. You know, there's lots of great examples of, humility and compassion and empathy all over the world. We just don't have enough of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
The wrong people, are unfortunately in leadership positions that are making, all of the decisions and choices, and
Yeah.
So I don't think there's been any more of an urgency to bring God back into the conversation than at any point in human history.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's a big movement out there that's trying to get rid of it.
Yeah.
There really is.
Yeah.
And when I'm connected, there's no fear.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no fear because I trust that I trust in the fact that God has it.
Yeah. Yeah.
God wins. God wins. Right.
Yeah.
God
Yeah.
wins. And
Yeah.
I gotta have faith in that.
Yeah.
So.
Hey, Theo, thanks so much, man. I'd love to have you back again and there's so many things. I'd love to hear more about your spiritual grandmother. I'd love to do a whole session on ego and humility. I got leadership, like, oh my goodness, so much. But for today, I just want to say thanks. And we don't always do this on the Good News podcast, but it just feels right to close with prayer today.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah,
Let's do it.
good. Yeah.
I'll do it. Yeah. Awesome. Loving and gracious God, have heard you speaking throughout this conversation today. And so we give you thanks for the way that you have worked in Theo's life, for those moments along the way that led him to surrender to this new path, this new life, and the way that you are using his past, even using the trauma that he's experienced, to bring healing and hope to so many, to that one person that comes up to him and says, me too, but to the millions and the others that are still to come. Give him energy, give him resiliency, continue to bring healing into the deepest places of his being. May your love continue to live in him and flow through him as he continues to not only heal him, but he brings that healing to so many people. Thanks again for this conversation today. For those that are listening, that maybe they're afraid to step forward, to admit what has happened, to move past any kind of stigma, to be vulnerable and open, and to begin to find healing as you lead and love us into and through these conversations. Thanks again for everything you've done today. We just entrust it all to you. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen.
Well, as we say in Blackfoot, Iksukapi. All good.
All good, brother. Well, hey, thanks again, Theo. Thanks, Troy. Friends, this wasn't meant to sell books or sober athletic wear, but honestly, check out this book. It's about way more than hockey. It's going to be, and it's about hockey too, if that's your thing. And Troy, just love what you're doing. So friends, if you want to support Troy and wear some sober wear, I bought a Christmas gift for my dad, and man, what with pride we wear these things because it sends a message that's so important. You never know, just wearing a shirt or a hat, the conversation might lead to and what might come of that. So friends, say yes to whatever God's calling you to surrender to. That's the big message. One of the big messages we've heard today. Troy and Theo, thanks so much to you both. Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Today. Awesome.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thanks everybody for joining us on the Good News Podcast. Till next time, God bless you and be with you. Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to the Good News Podcast with Jamie Holtum. If you liked what you heard today, please share it with a friend who may benefit from today's conversation. And if you want to hear more, be sure to subscribe to this show and turn on your notifications so you never miss an episode. Thanks again. We hope you enjoyed today's discussion, and we'll see you next time.